Am I on? I am on. Oh my goodness, this is so exciting to have all of you here. I did not think I might tear up, but you know what? I might actually tear up. Some of you, most of you, but some of you may not know that the Snail on the Wall has been in business for 6 years. Started as a pop-up store because a variety of reasons, but I didn't know anything about selling books, and that was one of the main reasons. So it was a great way to learn. But, then I decided it was really fun just to have a non-traditional kind of bookstore. And then, times change, and it just got to the point that Huntsville's ready. I think the Snail is ready. Christina Tabarrow is on board over there, and we are just ready. And we hope you are ready, and it's been a great response that you've given us so far just on social media saying, yeah, we can't wait to have a bookstore again. So, and there are other bookstores in Huntsville, but we're just going to try to bring the author events. That's really what we want to do. And so it just so happened that all this timing worked out that, we've hosted Georgina Cross before and done some things with her. And so then we found out that there was this new author in town. And we actually heard about it from a librarian, Carolyn Regal in Madison, and we got some librarians here tonight, and we love the librarians. And so she said, you've got to know about this debut author. At the same time, I was getting this book from the publisher, and I was hearing other booksellers around the country say, this is a great book. We are reading the advanced copies. It's amazing. Then it got picked for Book of the Month, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. Then it got picked for Indie Next. If you get our Indie Next list of the booksellers pick the best books of each month, it got picked for that. And at the same time, we thought, okay, we're going to have this brick and mortar space, but it's not going to be open. But what if we could do this event here? But we are grateful you're here. And I have already said a few words about Sarah Crouch, but I just want you to know, I read this book for probably a few months ago, and this is her very first novel, and published by a major publisher, Simon & Schuster. And it is a mystery, but it's atmospheric. It's being compared to Where the Crawdads Sing. She's also a runner, and we're going to hear about that. We're going to hear about all the ways that she's creative and active. And then we are thrilled for her conversation partner to be another Huntsville author, Georgina Cross.
Well, hello.
And she is also a thriller writer. She has got, her books are over here. One Night, Nanny Needed, her latest is The Perfect Husband. Some of her books have been optioned by Netflix for series, and we're hoping that happens. So you are in the presence of some very nationally known authors right here, and we are grateful to turn the conversation over to them.
Well, thanks. Well, hello. Can you guys hear me? Shannon was trying to do my mic, and then, is that good? Okay. So as Lady was saying, I'm Georgina Cross. I recognize a few faces back there. I know you. I feel like I've met you. Yes. I feel like yes. Oh, I remember you. Hello. Okay, now I'm sorry. Okay. So in my neighborhood, we moved, and in my neighborhood, I found out that there was another author. And when I started writing 4 years ago, I didn't know of any authors in Huntsville. So Robert Bailey, I think some of you have read his stuff. His really amazing books. So he's around the corner from me, and then I find out that Lady Smith, who runs Snail on the Wall, she's around the corner from both of us. So I'll walk, and I go by their houses, and Robert's kind of a serious guy, and he's trying to come sunset on his law career so he can write full time, so I can't go bother him. And then there's Jaco Affenford. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her. She's another author out in Madison, but she travels a lot with her husband. So when I found out about Sarah, I was like, oh my God, she lives here. Because for writers, it's a very solitary life. In fact, I'm thinking about doing an Instagram account called The Unglamorous Author, because I've had so many people say, well, it's so glamorous. Isn't it, Sarah?
No.
Exactly, right? I mean, we're in PJ pants or lounge pants. We're alone all day. We're still trying to raise children, and it can be a very solitary life. So to know that I don't have to necessarily go to a conference to meet an author, and now I've got Sarah. And the first time you and I met, it was like, vroom. We just talked and talked and talked. So this is very exciting. And we write similar.
We do.
In the same genre, which is very cool. Okay. So to warm this up, because I did tease Sarah that I'm a journalism major. So I was going to do some hard-hitting Barbara Walters type stuff.
And I said I'm a runner, so I'll sprint right out.
Yeah. And I'm not a runner, so I would still be sitting here like, wait. We're going to get to the running because that part kills me. Okay. So we're going to start with the lightning round. So no Barbara Walters, even though I would love to. But we're going to start with lightning round just to get Sarah like warmed up. Okay. And at the same time, we get to learn some stuff about her. You're her neighbor. You're about to learn like so much more about her. First question's easy peasy, Sarah. Favorite color?
I'm sorry, no one's asked me that in about 23 years. I'm going to go with green.
You're going to go with green.
Look
okay.
at the woods and the forest.
And stay on the wall is green.
You know what? I could just hold it. Sorry.
Okay, so green. That's good. We all know it's green.
Subject to change.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Are you a coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Thank God, I knew I liked you. Okay. What's your favorite day of the week?
Probably Sunday. That's usually long run day. So it's probably not the reason most people like Sundays, but I generally tend to sneak in a long run, church, and then just usually, if I'm lucky, maybe a cookout with my neighbor here. So
what's a long run? This is supposed to be lightning round, but hold on.
These days, not what it used to be.
But so what is a long run on your Sunday?
Right now, probably 10 to 15 miles.
Oh my.
If this was a room of runners now,
they'd be
a little bit easier on me. Yeah, it's not that far.
So I ran Cotton Row. I run every year with my dad. And my dad's about to be 80. So when I say run, I mean it's more like we're just hanging out together, plodding along. And my kids will run. They leave us, and then my mom. Anyway, so Sarah's all, oh my God, we ran Cotton Row too. We missed you. And I was like, hold up. We did the 5K. I want you to know that. And you did the 10K.
I sure did.
And you got what place?
I was third.
She was third, y'all. She was third.
It was a good day. Thank you.
Okay.
Did anybody else here run it? Did anybody else run Cotton Row?
You did?
Yeah, we got one.
5K? Are you 10 or 5?
I've run the 10 and 5.
Nice.
She knows the hill then. You know the one.
Hill.
Yeah.
We didn't have to do the hill because we're smart. And we signed up for the 5K. Our first mile was like a 14-minute mile. And my dad kept saying, well, the beginning is like 4 minutes, just trying to get past the starting line. I was like, oh, no. We were running so slow. Okay. I digress. Back to lightning round. How did you celebrate when you signed your book contract?
Oh, boy. So I got home from a run. I've been out for a run, and I knew that, my agent had let me know, like, hey, we have some interest in the book, and we potentially will be seeing an offer come in. And so I got back from my run, and during the run, I had this sort of like this 20-second daydream of like this offer of where I could like quit my job and kind of do the whole writer thing. And then after that 20 seconds, I was like, okay, forget it, ignore it. That doesn't happen. So I got home and I had a text from my agent. She said, call me. And I had my 6-month-old son who had a poopy diaper, and then my 2-year-old was just screaming bloody murder. But when your agent says, call me, and there's an offer on the line, you call. So I picked up the phone and I said, you might hear some crying. And she said, okay, we have an offer. And then she told me the offer, and it was 3 times the amount that I had dreamed. I'm going to cry just now. And I burst into tears, and she's like, well, you told me there'd be crying. So that was great. But honestly, having kids that young, we had 2 under 2 at the point. It's like, there is no celebrating. I think we tried to get ice cream, and that was a nightmare too. So it's like, the only way I can describe it is like in that moment, like everything and nothing changed all at the same time.
Yeah. I have an author friend, Rhea. So the day her book came out, I think she had all these dreams or an idea of what it's going to be. Again, why I want to start this account about the unglamorous author life. Her book came out, and she was like, okay. And then she went to the grocery store. And I was like, well, you still have to buy right?
Yeah,
So
you have little moments. Like I had a moment last week. I was like, everything in my fridge expires after my publication date. Like it's going to happen. I'm actually because you feel like at some point you feel like the woman in Titanic. That's like it's been 84 years. Like it is the slowest industry. It is molasses. So
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, so the kids are now how old?
they are 2 and 3. So
they're still little.
that part seems to be taking forever.
Yeah. They're
They're
so
still real
Did
little.
they
yeah.
like freak out at all? when
No,
you
they were
first-
just immensely disappointed that it had no pictures when I showed it to them. That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they keep you grounded, don't they?
And the cover, they're like, probably for a 2 and 3 year old, they're like,
No,
yeah.
I was like, I wrote this, like, and then back to Bluey. So
But for us, we're like, oh, because it's very, I mean, this is my genre. So if you guys are suspense, right? Like,
It's a pretty cover,
The
yeah.
cover is
Yeah.
very pretty. It's like atmospheric, as Lady said. It's perfect. It's
Yeah.
perfect. Colors
Yeah.
are perfect. Okay. Moving on with lightning round. Who was the first person you told about the contract? So as soon as you cried, the kids probably freaked out because now mom's crying.
right there.
Really?
Yeah. She and I, Christina, when you find someone, and Rocket City moms can speak to this, when you find that mom friend that has, she has 2 boys who are just tiny little tornadoes whirling around, and it's like when you have someone that you connect with, especially on that like motherhood level, I was just so pumped that I just like, I think I
That's
literally
cool.
called her right away from like 10 houses down the street. I'm like, hey, this just happened. So-
Screamed into the phone.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Okay. Who do you call or talk to when you need advice?
For a lot of years, it would have been my grandmother. She's gone now, but she was the most incredible woman. She raised 6 kids on her own. She was a forensic hypnotist. So she would like work with people who had like witnessed a crime and try to get them to remember like details of a crime. She went on to like, she sold pharmaceuticals on the road. She wrote a book and like self-published it yeah, so she's the one that I would have gone to. I was very, very cool in college. So I spent my spring breaks with my granny. So we had, she was just, and she would have loved this book so much.
Yeah.
So there even still, sometimes I think about on a run, just sort of have that kind of like one-sided conversation that you do with someone who's gone,
Yeah. Because okay, Sarah, you're not from here. You guys are.
Can y'all tell I'm not from here?
Can y'all Washington State?
Yes, Washington State. Yeah.
Right. But then we found out her mother's side is from this little tiny place in Oregon, Southern Oregon, Roseburg. Which is, Roseburg?
Yeah, Roseburg.
Which is where my husband grew up. So small world.
Real small, yeah.
And we still need to get y'all together to figure out, like,
If we're maybe
there's
related a little
cousins.
bit. Yeah, no.
We could be related
I know, it's
through
possible.
marriage. So we still have to figure that out. We just haven't. But that, okay. So, and then you guys moved here.
Oh, we made a lot of pit stops along the way from Washington. We moved to North Carolina, Lake Tahoe, Massachusetts, Kentucky, Arizona, Washington again, and then here. So every time we get here, people are like, oh, you must be military. But no, we were professional long-distance runners. So we were training at altitude in Flagstaff, at altitude in Tahoe. We spent our winters in the South. It's like we moved all over the place to train and get the most
So your
out of ourselves.
husband is because I know he trains people.
But he is also an
But
elite.
he's also an elite runner.
So his 5K time is 13:40, which is 4 minutes and 20 seconds a mile for a 5K.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't sound
my
humanly
mile.
possible, but it is, yeah.
So have you guys done the incline
What on earth is the incline?
in Colorado? The steep.
No.
So they train Olympic athletes on. Has anybody done the incline? You've done
What?
it. You've done it. Yeah, you're like athletic.
I live in Colorado Springs, so yeah.
Yes, it's in Colorado Springs. You need to go. Y'all need
wow.
to go. So my husband, Freudian slip. My husband did it, and he said these athletes, which would probably be you, were like passing him because they literally sprint prance. And it gets so steep that at one point, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to like pull on the rope and you're almost like.
How long
pull.
do you have to do that? How far does it go?
It's 2 miles straight up.
That's no joke. Wow. Yeah.
So, okay. So y'all haven't done that yet?
No.
Let us know how it goes.
You can't like bring a toboggan and give up halfway and no? Okay. Then I'm out.
Go and tell us how it was.
Okay.
We'll live vicariously through you.
Sounds good.
Okay. Where am I? Okay. Oh, are you a Christmas girl or Halloween girl?
Oh, I love both so much. That's in October I'm Halloween and in December I'm Christmas. I'm so sorry. And right now I'm full blown 4th of July, baby. Let's
Okay.
try. Yeah.
All right. Are you a beach girl or a mountains girl?
I'm a mountains girl.
Mountains
for
girl.
sure.
Okay. What's one of your favorite cities you've ever been?
Duluth, Minnesota. That
Really?
sounds crazy, but it really, really is. They have a race there that I did a couple of times, And there's a race that starts on the border of Lake Superior, I think is the lake. It's one of the Great Lakes. But it's June and it's like 40 degrees and the fog is so thick you can't see your hand in front of your face and you hear like the foghorns coming off the lake. And then you run around the lake over these cobblestone streets into town. And it is just this quaint, incredible little fishing village. I cannot describe it. Like I cannot adequately do it justice. I could spend 90,000 words doing it. I couldn't do it justice, but it's incredible. It's probably my favorite city in the U.S.
What time of year were you there?
June, and it's weird because in Minneapolis, like 2 hours south, it'll be 90 degrees, but that lake weather is just incredible.
Oh, it sounds beautiful.
It is. It's amazing.
I would trade that right now. Like, how many of you guys are from Alabama, or at least have lived here long enough that you feel like, right? It's about to be what Devil's
But you don't
Front
want to
Porch
spend
soon.
winter in Duluth. Let's be honest.
No. People who live in Minnesota all year, I question their sanity. But yeah, I mean, that 60, 70 degrees during the summer would be awesome. Okay. So let's start getting into your writing style. Do you write in the morning? I know you got the 2 small children. So are you a morning writer, evening writer, or whenever squeeze time in?
So since having kids, I have just had horrific insomnia. So most days I'm up around 3 or 4 in the morning, unfortunately. Not by choice. I don't set an alarm. But because my family's not up till 6 or 7, that is the chunk that I use to write. And then what I'll do is I'll often go back in the afternoon, and I find that couple hours of distance, I can edit in the afternoon what I wrote that morning. It's like that few hours kind of acts as like a tuning fork to the manuscript. So if anything's like sharp or flat, I can hear it. Whereas when you're right in it, you're smelling the perfume for too long. You can't really tell if it's like garbage or brilliant. But yeah, so I'm an early morning writer.
So you're writing, you said 1 to 2 hours?
Yeah, as much as I can squeeze in.
As much
morning.
as, yeah. Mm-hmm. There's a beautiful phrase. I don't know who said it first, but some writers will write in the edges of time. Well, they'll find the edges of time. So it's like literally, Maya Angelou, I think she was, before she went to work, so it was 7, 8, or before she had to go in, was at 7. I know, like Robert Bailey, who's local, right? He would write in the morning, 4 a.m., and then he'd go into the law office. When I started writing, I was able to only write on the weekends, so I did my Monday through Friday gig, and then when I was able to leave that job, it was in the mornings, because the kids would either sleep, because they're lazy teenagers who sleep, till noon, and I was like, well, this works out, or yeah, it's just like whenever you can grab that time.
If you sit down at like 10 o'clock at night, can you do it? Because I can't, like my creative well is just completely dry.
No, nighttime, I'm like, so I don't run really, and then I have boundaries, Sarah, and then at night, I'm like, Netflix is my nighttime.
Yeah.
And then I'm reading for an hour or two before. But no, I'm sure you know author friends who write at 1, 2 a.m. And it's whenever it suits you. You just have to find it, how it works.
That's why I always feel like whenever writers ask for advice, it's like, figure out what works for you. That's the answer. When they're like, oh, how do I make it work? How do I make a writing routine? It's like you have to experiment. Sometimes it's trial and error, but if you figure out.
So are you a desk? Like sit down, you got your workstation, or are you like laptop with a kid hanging and then you like deposit the kid and then keep
I have a beautiful like 100-year-old roll top secretary desk, and I don't think I've written a single word at it. I sit in this like stained, horrible recliner in our living room where I would like nurse my kids and stuff. It's comfortable.
Yeah.
I always end up writing there instead of at this beautiful little writing room that I have set up. I don't think I wrote a single word of the novel. And then I do every now and then, if I am writing during the day, I go to the library. I love. Have you been to the Madison branch? You have. Yeah. They have this great little room that has a fireplace and a couple of like cozy chairs, and it's just perfect. Yeah.
And the kids aren't there.
The kids are not there.
So you can be like, I got to go to work.
Yeah. Or the kids are in the playing in the back. So that works.
Yes. Okay. I was sure because I'm a butt and desk kind of a girl, so I need to be like sitting in a chair at a desk. But I know lots of author friends who roam, and that's the reason we have laptops. We're supposed to unplug it and move around, and I have yet to grasp that. So I like sit at the desk. Yeah. Okay. So you and I write very differently. Okay. So that was enough of the lightning round. You did so good.
Oh, thanks.
So well. I mean, you did so well. Okay. Back to this running thing, because like I can't stop thinking about it. When we were at lunch, because I was like, tell me about all of it. You've ran. How many marathons?
I told you I didn't really know the exact number. I promised you I'd figure it out, and I don't think I did.
Do you remember? You gave me
roughly between 15 and 20, I think. Yeah.
50.
No, 15 and 20.
Oh, 15.
No.
Oh,
but I also,
okay.
But I did in my career, a lot of like half marathons and 10Ks and things like that as well. So it was like races total, it's probably close to 1,000.
Do we have any other runners in here? We've got some of the incliners. You're a runner? So marathons?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, that's impressive. So what got you, were you in high school and running track or cross country, or what got you into it?
Believe it or not, it was actually a pet rooster that got me into running. Let me explain. Growing up, we didn't exactly live on a farm, but we had a llama, we had a goat, we had a horse at one point, we had a bunch of chickens, and it was supposed to be a chick, but it hatched into a rooster, and it was the meanest animal I've ever met in my life. So when we were growing up, one of the jobs you had to do before school is like, okay, go out and feed the animals, like alfalfa for the llama and stuff like that. So I was in the barn feeding the goat and the llama, and I hear this rustling sound in the corner, and I'm just like, oh no. And I turn, and it's Dude the rooster. His name was Dude. And he just looked at me, and sometimes he just got this like look in his eye, and he raised one of his claws like this. And I took off so fast out of the barn, he was right on my heels, and they have like with the beaks. And so I'm sprinting around the house. I did 2 full laps around the house with Dude on my heels, dove into the back porch, slammed the door, and my dad had been standing in his room watching out the window. He's like, I think I'm gonna sign you up for track. And that is how I started running.
He was like, she's really fast and didn't even break a sweat. This is amazing. Did he set Dude on you more often? So, like, was that part of your training?
Dude ended up in a stew about a month later, so I win.
Yeah. And he was delicious. Okay, so you ran all through high school.
Oh yeah, all through high school,
And
well
then-
into college, and then my very last race as a senior, I won NCAA nationals in the 10K, and I signed a contract with Reebok 2 weeks later, so went right on to run professionally. Yeah.
And that's how you met your husband?
Yes.
In college?
Yes.
Because he's an elite runner.
He is, yeah. So he was over in Charlotte, North Carolina. Our daughter's name is Charlotte because that's
Okay.
where we met. So after I had won nationals, I was being interviewed by this running online company, and halfway through the interview, this guy runs behind the interview making a face, like bombing the interview. And so later on, someone's like, hey, this guy photobombed your interview. And I was like, I recognize that guy because he had won a couple of national titles. He was a really good runner. So I found him online, and I was like, listen, if you win your race tomorrow, I'm bombing your interview. And he was very smooth. He was like, I could just take you out for a drink to apologize. And then that night, I called my sister. I was like, I just met the guy I'm going to marry.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm trying to picture their dinner conversations. Like, can't you just pick 2 elite athletes? They're like, how many carbs did you have today?
I have seen that man eat 3 corn dogs for breakfast. You would not believe.
But you know why he can eat the 3 corn dogs? Because he ran.
He's running 100 miles.
He ran 20 miles on his long run day on Sunday,
Yeah.
and Sarah's like, I did 20 miles too. All right.
It's like writing. It's one of those jobs that looks way more glamorous from the outside. Not at all.
You're
Not
gonna
at all.
inspire me. I walked today.
Well, you're gonna run tomorrow.
I'm gonna
okay?
jog that thing tomorrow. There we go. Okay. So we're still in the running. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So when we were at lunch, we were talking because I said to you, "Well, do you have running?" I hadn't read your book yet. Oh, we did the SWAT. That's right. We did the SWAT when we first met. So I hadn't read the book yet, and I said to Sarah, "So is there running in the book? Like you being such a runner?" And I think you said no.
Running somehow seems to find its way into everything I write, at least a little bit. I can't really help
So
it.
I want to let you know that
Okay.
Elijah.
Journalism major, here we go.
Because I got to this part in the book and I was like, hold up. So Elijah runs about 20 minutes into the reservation looking for Nikita. And the way in the book it's presented is like he just quickly like, oh, she's not here, and then jaunts the 20 minutes to go. And I was like, who? Jaunt? You didn't use the word jaunt, but I was like,
Next time I'll say John. To be fair though, Elijah, and I'm sure we'll get into this later, but Elijah is an incredibly autobiographical character. I would jaunt for 20 minutes and I would turn around and jaunt back.
wow.
So
yeah.
I
yeah.
hold to that.
So what is a short run for you? What do you consider a short?
6 or 7 miles. With Christina.
Yeah, because you're a runner
We will do-
too.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently we're not here to talk about books. We're just here to talk about running. Everybody's gonna run tomorrow. Okay, so we already talked about Oregon or in the connection with my husband and you growing up in Washington. What brought you guys here then?
I mean, Madison is just, honestly, it's the really, truly the best place in the country to raise a family. It is. We looked at a lot of different places and we were debating a couple of different places, especially in the South, because we'd lived in North Carolina, we'd lived in Kentucky. And it's just one of those things where when I moved to North Carolina, it just felt like I was coming home somehow, even though I'd never been there before in my life. But there's just something about the South that, even though I feel like the natural beauty of the Northwest is unparalleled, I don't think I can beat that. but I wouldn't choose to be there. I would choose to be here. I do miss it. I miss those woods every day. That is half the reason I wrote this book, is because selfishly I wanted a chance to open my computer and step across the country, like back into those forests for a couple hours a day. So yeah, I mean,
you did a good job.
Thank you.
I felt like I was in. Who's read it yet? I mean, I know you got your. So you've already okay.
It came out today. Y'all are okay.
Yeah. So it came out. Yeah. It won't hurt Sarah's feelings. It literally, and you literally just got your hardback cover in your hands. But those of you who read it, don't you feel like you were in there? I mean, that first line where the water slaps and the foam slaps the side of the boat, and that word slaps to me,
it slaps, doesn't it?
It slaps, and I could hear it, and I was like, oh, and they push back the branches, and I love the deputy relationship. Not to spoil. I mean, this doesn't spoil anything. These are some of the minor characters, but to me, there was this special relationship between the deputy and the sheriff, right?
There is, yeah. It's the sheriff, a guy who's on the brink of retirement, and one of his first lines in the book is like, not one time, not one blessed time did someone have the nerve to be murdered in this town. So he's on the brink of retirement, 68 years old, and then his very new deputy, who is very eager, but perhaps doesn't have the experience to sort of solve this crime. So I really enjoyed those chapters. I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you, this is not, if you're looking for like a hard-boiled police procedural, this is not your book. Those chapters are very much, they're comfort food. And those were my favorite characters to write, for sure.
Yeah, I love, well, especially because the sheriff's deputy, he's so like, wet behind the ears. I mean, there's even a couple lines that made me laugh out loud because he's so, like you said, eager and like, oh, yay, you know, there is blood, or, you know, or there is like very, very exciting. I thought that was wonderful. So is it based on anybody you know, or you just?
Very, very, I would say that I watched a lot of Andy Griffith growing up. So some of that, surely Andy and Barney bled their way in. Yeah,
I can see that.
Absolutely.
There, yeah, there you go. Okay. All right, so now I'm probably all over the place, because now I just want to start talking about the book.
We can. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, we don't want to hear about. Okay, so talk to me about, because I've read reviews and comments about the Native American part of this book, which I think a lot of people found really interesting. And for those of you who haven't gotten into your copy yet, and those of you who've already read it, you know, you open it up with like a statement. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So, in the last 20 years, I mentioned I've moved around a lot. Two of the places that I've lived the longest, both towns, Flagstaff and Bellingham, Washington, they touch reservations. So I've always been really, really interested in the dynamic between reservations and the U.S. citizen towns that they touch. And I knew that in the Northwest, especially if I was going to set a novel there, it's not possible to grow up in Washington State without interacting with people from various tribes, and I really wanted that to be an element in this story. Now, I have gotten a lot of criticism from people because the entire universe of the story, the town, the reservation, it is all fictitious. So very much in the way that, like the show Yellowstone that's out right now, like they have a fictitious reservation and a fictitious town. So the whole universe of the story is fictitious, but I was very careful to make sure that everything in the book is very accurate of what a tribe in the Northwest would be like. And I just really truly, I wanted to celebrate, you know, Native American culture. That was an important thing, and it was something that, I didn't want to leave it out. I'm not interested in writing a book that has nothing but a cast of white characters. That doesn't really appeal to me.
So
that's why
especially where the setting was.
Yes.
And so for me, you know, I grew up outside of New Orleans, so I'm very used to Cajun French culture. My husband being in Oregon, so we literally, right after you and I met, David and I flew to Oregon and had to get my son a car. We had to bring back a bunch of his parents' stuff, besides the point. Bought the car, crammed it with a bunch of stuff, and drove back. And for me, who's not used to that at all, and I don't know many of you who visited that part of the country, even going into like the equivalent of the Shoney's, I don't even know what restaurant, like a Friendly's? Did we go to a Friendly's? Does
Probably.
that sound familiar?
Yeah, it does.
Okay,
yeah.
It was like a Shoney's.
I think they're actually the same
but like
thing,
a Friendly's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, to see an entire Native American family, for me, that is very unusual. And I kept staring, and David's like, stop staring. And I was just fascinated. And then, as of course, driving across Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and then I was like, oh, Yellowstone, Kevin Costner, oh my God. And it's all the reservations are there for you for this book, because you make that opening statement about you have made up this tribe. So where did you come up with the name?
So that is very much in that region. Almost all the tribes in that region start with SQ. They start with that phonetic. So again, it's just something that's.
And how do you pronounce it? Because
it'd be Squaloma, yeah.
Squaloma.
So, but a lot of
Squaloma when y'all are reading.
Yeah.
Because when I read it, I was like Squaloma. Which obviously is wrong.
I don't care. It's in your head. You can pronounce it, yeah.
Okay, Squaloma.
Yeah, but like a lot of the, because when we were in Flagstaff, like our church was about half Navajo, and so we got to know. Like there was a woman at our church. We spent time with them on the reservation making fry bread, which is. That happens in the book. And she told us the story about how when the U.S. gave them this designated reservation, they said, okay, here's flour, here's lard, and salt. Good luck. And they had to learn how to survive and how to make fry bread, which is something that sustained them for generations. So yeah, it's a lot of it is taken from like real, legitimate, actual interactions that I've had with people in my life who are from those cultures.
The Sacred Mountain. That's also a fictitious.
Yeah, that's not.
Okay, and because this derails into like some of the more serious conversations around authorship, and I know you with appropriation, right? Like it gets to the point where we as authors are not afraid. That's not the right word, but we're aware. We're more aware now of what someone would deem, and I think it's it was probably safer for you because you're not Native American, correct?
A very small percentage.
Like a tiny, like 1/8?
Like most Americans. No, it's, my great-great-grandmother was Cherokee.
Oh, okay. So you've got more. Okay. But the criticism of can we write about a tribe or a reservation? And so you went
I think
route.
Well, the difference is this, like perspective. I didn't write the story of someone living on a reservation because that's not my experience.
Yes.
This story is Elijah's story. He's living in a white citizen town next to a reservation, which is my experience. So perspective matters, and then also tone. Are you being villainizing, stereotyping, derogatory?
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons that we made sure to get a very good Indigenous sensitivity reader and to.
Oh, you did?
Oh, of course we did. Yes.
Cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
to make sure that everything checked out.
Yeah. Because Nikita is like, and for y'all haven't started reading it yet, but it's like a lovely love story. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because like in crime fiction, it's like you have your timeline because dead body at the beginning, killer caught at the end, but the love story, that's the soul of this story. Yeah.
Well, because you can like get away with the brutal murder because the beginning it's like whoa. I
mean, it's not gory, but it's shocking.
When the boat clears through the water and they get closer and they see it.
Yeah.
When you guys get to, because it's like page 4 or 5, it's
it's pretty close.
It's a pretty short beginning, and then it hits you and you're like whoa, and I could picture it. I love creepy though, so I can picture it. So then you have to buffet it with there's.
You go a little creepier in your books than I do.
I do, but I'm proud of you for doing it because that was creepy. I was like, that was hardcore. I love it. But then it follows with this like childhood love. So do you have a childhood love? I mean, I know you met your husband young.
I wouldn't very well say so on camera, would I?
Was there a crush before the husband?
So, of course there was. But I will say this, I think, in writing any sort of love story, there's many different sort of tropes, as they're called, of like star-crossed lovers, enemies to lovers, things like that. I was really interested in the idea of if you returned to your hometown and you saw that person that you'd first been in love with, all those years later, like 17 years later, and that flame had not quite gone out. Like, how would you react? How would you respond to that? And so I felt like, especially there's a scene in the book where these two people, after kind of dancing around each other in the town for a few chapters, they finally come face to face. And when I wrote that scene, that was my favorite scene to write in the book. I felt like I was almost like standing behind a tree, like, what are they going to say? What are they going to do? And my heart was racing because you do have that. There are people in my hometown that it's like, I don't know what I would say if I ran into that person. And especially that first love, we all remember that first love. Like that flame is very intense. It can be reckless and stupid. And it's maybe not the most mature love, but it is strong. To be very honest, I don't think most of our adult loves are as strong as that first 14, 15, 16-year-old passionate love.
That is very true because it's one of the first.
Yeah.
And I think theirs was more complicated because he promised to come back, right? And so she basically waited.
Yeah.
No, she did wait. Basically, she waited for him. And how many years later?
4 years, yeah.
Yeah. So now you've got that complicates the love story a bit. And then there are the awkward moments when, like you said, when they see each other because they are dancing around. And we've all seen it. We've done it ourselves, or we've seen it with loved ones where nobody wants to be the first to admit, I still really like you, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do that. And it's more complicated because she's now married.
Or she's widowed. Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
We are giving spoilers all over the place, aren't we? Sorry. I'm so
sorry, y'all. No, this will intrigue them.
Okay.
They need to know that there's this like love story in there. Okay. So you already described that one of your favorite scenes was them when they finally got together and you felt like you were behind the tree. What's another favorite scene that pops into your head?
It's so funny. It's been so long now since I've written the book that every now and then someone will be like, oh, I love this character. I'm like, who are they talking about?
Yeah.
I was like, someone mentioned like someone named Della, and I was like, I do not remember naming anyone Della. So I have to really go back and think. I am particularly attached to that opening prologue, those first few chapters, just because there's something about, I love a book that opens in a way that is like truly cinematic and just drops you head first into whatever setting you're going to be in. So yeah, I'm pretty attached to the prologue, but I also really enjoy the epilogue. And because we've already given away too many spoilers, I'm not going to say a thing about it.
Right.
Yeah.
No more spoilers.
Yeah, nothing.
I'm sorry. No, because now they're all like at the edge of their seats. Like, what's this love story? And what happened? See, they're going to be like running home to read it. Okay, so because I'll say the opening chapter, that's one of my favorites. In fact, I've read it 3 times.
Oh, thank you.
And not just in preparation for tonight, because of the way that you describe it and you feel as if I didn't feel like I was in the boat necessarily, but I was definitely near the bank and I'm watching. And it's such a quiet place, right? It was like a secret fishing spot.
Yeah, I think honestly, I love when writers do this, where if they're gonna reveal something that's particularly shocking or gruesome, contrast is your best friend. So if you set it somewhere that is like in the woods of Washington State, which are peaceful and verdant and lush, and then bam, murder. Yeah. It's just, so
literally,
I think it does, it helps it pack a little more of a punch when it does somewhere that's not like gritty nighttime Chicago, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Did you always, we talked a little bit about this at lunch, but with everybody here, did you always want to write suspense or had you started off? Okay.
So it's funny, and everyone's like, oh, this is your first novel. It's not. It's the first one that's published, but so when I was 25 years old, I had just run the Boston Marathon and I was completely burned out. I was just totally fried. And I called my coach and I said, listen, I need a minute. Like, I need to not run for a little bit. And to his credit, because it was my job to run, he was like, okay, take some time off, do something else. And when you miss it, give me a call. So I took a few weeks off, and I'd always heard that statistic of the people who start writing a book, it's like 2 or 3% ever finish it. It's like an incredibly small percent. So I wondered, like, do I have that sort of stamina? Now, I didn't have kids at the time, but I sat down, and over the course of 10 days, I wrote a 60,000-word novel. Not any good. It will never be published.
Over the course of how many days?
10 days.
Whoa.
So but I at least learned, like, I can do this thing, and I was hooked. So while I was running professionally, secretly for years and years and years, I was writing manuscript after manuscript after manuscript. Middletide just happens to be the first one that broke through. And I'm glad it is, because you want to debut at your best, and I feel like there's a huge difference between that and the other ones that I wrote.
Women's fiction? Like, what were the other ones? What genre were they?
They just, like most people, when you're trying to figure it out, you were just all over the place. So I once wrote a sci-fi based on a dream I had. So when I say they're all over the place, like, they're truly all over the place. I promise this one's better, you guys. No, but I think the real difference in this one was this is the first time I actually plotted a novel. So in the writing community, you're called a pantser or a plotter. You fly by the seat of your pants, and you kind of write as you go, which I had done for 8 manuscripts in a row, or you plot, you figure out what's going to happen. So I always think of a plot as like, in like a middle school science room, you have that skeleton that's hanging in the corner. That's your plot. So for me, that's like a 3,000-word synopsis, like what's going to happen chapter by chapter. So when it comes time to actually write the book, it's like, okay, I'm crafting a muscle, but I know where it goes. I know what its purpose is. I know what it's going to do and how it's going to fit on the body overall. So that really, truly, especially with a book like this, where you're dealing with timelines that weave in and out and clues that are dropped early that don't come into play until chapters later. And honestly, the truth is, and you know this truth too, like a novel, you have to lie convincingly for 90,000 words.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And so to keep your lie straight.
It's weird.
Yes, it is. So to keep your lie straight, for me, like a synopsis is just invaluable. So I guess that honestly is probably the number one piece of writing advice, is if you haven't done that and you're like, I'm just banging my head against the wall, writing manuscripts, can't get published, can't figure it out, try plotting. Yeah, because that made the difference for me.
And then it gets more complicated if you have the unreliable narrator. How many of you heard of that? So now, like, the unreliable narrator is lying, and the book is all one big lie, and then we throw in red herrings to trip you guys up because that's fun and that's more life. So it's just like, and yeah, it's, but we enjoy it.
We do.
And then we hope that when you guys read it, that it's a step out of, it's a step out of reality. And I think we talked about this at lunch too, but I write suspense, but I also read a ton of suspense. And I watch who's like Netflix true crime document. Oh my gosh, right? Okay. All the cults. If there's a cult, I'm on it. Like, has anybody watched the dancing TikTok cult? Yes, crazy, because it's happening like right now.
Okay, after this, you need to tell me more because I need to.
They're still trying to get these dancers back, and the parents can't get a hold of. Okay, so I obviously need some palate cleansers, but there's like memes that make fun of people like us, where and my husband, he's like, I'm kind of worried about you. But what I've read is it's very cathartic for us because we don't have a lot of control in our everyday. I mean, who has control over their everyday lives? And so when we see someone who's up against some sort of hardship, whether it's a family crisis or, my goodness, a loss of a family member or something, like a murder, and to watch that person try to persevere and try to get answers, it's very cathartic. And so that's what I tell myself, because I'm like worried about myself psychologically. But I think the same has to happen in our writing. I have no control over what my teenage children are going to do tonight.
Yeah.
I'll find out at midnight. But I do have some semblance of control in the writing, and I think that's why, and especially with suspense writing, we get to solve it, hopefully. We need to solve it.
And also, serial, okay, I shouldn't even know this fact, but I do. So serial killing in the US right now, it is at an all-time low. And the reason is not that we're more mentally stable, because we are not.
Right.
But it is so much harder to get away with it, right? Because smartphones, videos everywhere. And that's another reason. Yeah, so I set this book in the 90s because I want it to be that much more difficult to solve crimes. So that's one of the reasons. I don't think I'll ever write past 2000-ish.
Yeah, because that's happening. More and more authors, I'm finding it hard too. I write present tense stuff, and every house I'm like, oh, but they would have Ring camera. I mean, how many of you here have at least one Ring? How many of you have more than one Ring on your house, right? Like, I think we have 7 because we have teenage children, and but
6 kids, 6 cameras.
6 kids, 6 cameras. Okay, you
checks
need
out.
some like grown-up night out time. You sure do. But it's becoming harder and harder, and cell phones where they can track you and message you. And so, you don't give away what your next draft or your next book is going to be unless you want to talk about it. But is it set? She said no.
Not even a little bit.
Is it set also?
But pre-smartphone. They will all be pre-smartphone until I'm 70 years old. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they will. Yeah.
Because, smart girl.
Yeah.
Because it's getting really, really
No, it is.
hard.
But also, I feel like there is a deep hunger in the market for 90s nostalgia.
Yeah.
Like, truly, it's so crazy that now it's like we look back on the 90s as a simpler time, but it was.
It was.
And I just feel like, and I love when books are set. I love when books are set, before
And I think also too, it's our age group, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That was for us, a lot of us, that was high school, college. You guys look younger, so not for you. But some high school, college. Okay. So there's
Do you know what floppy disks are? Okay. All right, you're good. You're allowed to stay.
Yeah, this front row, y'all were. Yeah, you were. Okay. But it's getting so much harder, and back to like writing and not knowing if you wanted to do suspense, sci-fi. You hear about this a lot too, where authors, especially when we're starting, we just want to write what we want to write. First of all, we just want to get a book finished.
Yeah.
'Cause that's a major coup, just to get through 80, 90,000 words and put that glorious 2 words at the end, right? Oh, the end is like the best. And then you close your laptop and you go to the grocery store. Like nothing changes.
No.
And so for me, I wanted to write what I wanted to write, and only when we got like sucked into the publishing world, they tell you. So they told me, my first publisher said, you're a domestic suspense. I had no idea what that was. And essentially that's just stories that are in a neighborhood setting or small town setting that you as a reader could imagine or picture. And if it happens to your neighbor, which you're hoping to God it doesn't, how are you deciding their decisions are if it happened to you? And I thought, but I don't want to just write domestic suspense. And then my other publisher was like, let your crazy flag fly and go wild. I said, this is who I want to write with, because I don't want to be pigeonholed. Have you felt like, now that you've written Middletide, do you think you'll continue to write suspense? Like, do you feel like the publisher is?
That's a great question. So I'm just really fortunate to have landed with a very, very good publisher. So Lindsay, my editor, it's just so funny because an editor's name, they never end up on the cover of the book, but they do a tremendous amount of work. So Lindsay, she was the one who bought Gone Girl and worked on it. So she's very much that
a little book called Gone Girl.
A little bit, you may have heard of it.
Little book.
So she, the reason I chose her is I had multiple offers from different houses, but of all the editors and all the agents I spoke to, she didn't see the twist coming from a mile away. She saw it from like 45 miles away. She is whip smart, like nothing gets past her. And so when it came time to choose a publisher, to choose someone to work with, I talked to my agent. So back in the day, my agent was actually a competitive figure skater. So I said, listen, I was like, if you were going into a season as a figure skater and you had your choice of coaches, and the coach after coach, they were like, you're gonna love the training, we're gonna have so much fun, and then you get to this one coach that is like, you need work, it's gonna be hard, it's not always gonna be fun, but at the end of the season you're gonna make an Olympic team, who would you pick? And she's like, I'd pick the one, and I was like, Lindsay's that person.
Yeah.
And so honestly, it's like writing a good book, like there are good books that never get read, there are great books that never get published. Writing a good book is not enough. That's like crafting a beautiful 747 with no engine in it. Like your publisher puts the engine in and sends it down the runway at 600 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So they should get way, way, way more credit than authors a lot of the time, and they don't. We get these moments right here when I feel like Lindsay should be sitting right here.
They get like that second line in the acknowledgement section. You know,
Right.
or maybe a paragraph if you really like love them a lot. No, you're absolutely right. A lot of times for authors, we are self-entrepreneurs, which is exciting, but at the same time, it's like, oh my goodness, there's no 401k anymore, and there's no automatic paycheck every 2 weeks, but we are solopreneurs. But truly, our editor is our boss, because they are the ones paying us at the end of the day. They're the ones keeping us to a deadline. So with that being said, with your contract signed and deadlines, how many drafts did you go through?
Oh man. I'm curious
I say this
your
with
answer.
an evil grin because I want you to be like, it was like 6 or 7.
So there is kind of a competition among writers of when you get your edit letter from your editor, because it's like you just feel, you go through this moment of like, why did they buy it? They hate it. They hate me. And it's you mope for about a week, and then you're like, oh, this is really good. This is good constructive criticism. My edit letter was 17 pages long, single space. Like it was extensive. And
I loved your book. Here are all the things I'd like you to change.
I loved it. Here's all the things I hated.
Yeah.
No, but a lot of it is just like, it's very much, I'm horrible at keeping secrets. I want to tell too much up front, and Lindsay's just like, tuck this behind a cloud, put this here, move that 4 chapters back.
Like breadcrumb it.
Yes, yeah. So really, it was just 2 really big rounds of edits. So like one very big developmental edit where we it's like a blueprint of a house. She's like, I don't like that bathroom there, move it here. It's that edit, and then you go through a round of copy edits, which are just
like you want to pull your hair.
Yes, they're not for us.
Yeah.
Right brain type people. It's like this comma here and that is my least favorite part.
Anything major did you have to change? Character's name.
Yeah, but I can't give anything away.
Oh,
without,
right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there was nothing like crazy. Like I didn't have, like one of my author friends who's debuting in a month. The entire ending of her book, like the way it ended, had to be completely rewritten. So I'm lucky that none of that happened. But yeah, a lot of little changes, I would say.
Did your ending have to?
No.
Okay, so that's cool.
Yeah.
But there was some rearranging.
There was some tears.
Because editors, I mean, that's their job, right? Like, think about how many books they read and the ones they know that will sell. So they are able to come in with that eye, the forest, they can see the forest within the trees. Whereas, we come in and it is a strange feeling, because the phone call to say, we're going to be your publisher, it's like, I love your book, I love you, you're amazing, you're the best author in the world. And then months later you get this letter and it's like whiplash. Well, wait, I thought you loved it. And then it's, we still want your book, but now we want, It is a very strange feeling.
Yeah, but you remember, like, they're people too, and they're writing because they legitimately care and they want this book. They're the shepherd, they're the midwife of this story from you into the world. And so, Lindsay told me that when she got her, and she's been at this for 25 years, but when she very first took a book home, she called her boss and was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know how to edit a book. And her editor's like, all you have is your ear. Like, you've been reading books your whole life. All you have is your ear. So anything, that's like confusing or boring or anything like that. And for people who, I don't know, how many of you write? We got a good few writers. So it's like, that's why having a beta reader, having somebody else read it, because unfortunately as authors, like, we are the one person that does not have the luxury to ever open our book as a reader. We can't do it. And yeah, there comes a point where you've just been smelling the perfume for too long and you have too many blind spots. So
Let me ask you this, 'cause you've had ARCs for a while. Have you read your book since it came out?
I've had to. Like, I will never read it by choice again because,
But
oh
you
my gosh.
had to, why?
Well, but you have to go. I had to go through my arc because they were saying, hey, that we have our final printing in a month if you
Oh,
want. And there
right.
were 3
Yeah.
typos that I
Yeah,
caught, and I
okay.
was like, I will not sleep at night if a typo ends up in the final copy. But it's 90,000 words. Like, something sneaks through.
Something, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
One question. How much time do we have? Are we still good?
We should probably get questions or.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then those of you who are, I'm totally going to plug something. Is that okay? Is that okay?
Please
You're
do,
okay.
yeah.
For those of you who raise your hand, and we can get involved together in the future, I'm going to start hosting workshops. So for those of you who are interested in writing or learning how to, or just need somebody on your back to be like, it's due August, I want to see a draft,
Yeah.
right? But the first one will be in July at Madison Library with Carolyn Regal. So I'll get some more information out, and then I'd like to, based on interest, start doing it more, and that'd be cool
Yeah.
if you wanted to get involved.
Yeah,
It
Carolyn
would get us out
mentioned
of the
it too.
house.
Yeah, it will.
Oh my God, it would get us out of the house away from children. And just, for me, I know that accountability is so important. That's why they do tell you, don't keep it a secret. Like Mary Kubica kept it a secret until literally she got the book contract. But for me, I think the more people you tell, the more accountability, where they're
Yeah.
like, how's that book coming? And you can go,
Yeah.
or you can be like, well, actually, because I knew you were going to ask me, I've got something written.
Yeah.
Let's move over to audience questions. I'm sure you, yes, ma'am.
So we're talking about if your editor suggests changes to your book or a character name or something, can you say, well, this is my name on the book, and apparently you're on page like line 2.
So really, when you sign a contract, you're signing it over, like it belongs to them. But that being said, a good editor, though, it's always a conversation. And that's the one thing that, like, I'm brand new at this. It was my first time going through it. And Lindsay, like, she is just an icon, like, in the publishing world. But to her credit, she extended that grace back to me. Whereas when we disagreed creatively, she would say that. She'd say, your name is on the cover of the book. If you can live with it, I can live with it. So a good editor will defer to you, even if they don't really have to. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a little book cover and your name's on the book cover. An artist totally different does the book cover.
Again, this depends imprint to imprint and house to house. So with Simon & Schuster, they have an entire art department. This was designed by a guy named Jimmy Iacobelli, who's their art director. So what they do is they go to an author and they say, what don't you want? And for me, I said, I don't want a dark thriller Gone Girl cover because this is not a dark thriller. I don't want it to be like marketed or pushed that way. And then they said, are there any colors? I didn't want pink, brown, yellow. I just had a whole set in my mind. And then, once you got that out of the way, they said, what do you see? And I said, I just want it to be as atmospheric as the book is. I wanted it to have that feeling to it. So there is a lot of feedback, but I will tell you this, and you'll have to tell me your experience too. Often, because as the author, when you're writing the book, you have this idea in your head. When you get your covers, you have a very strong reaction, and it's usually not a positive one because it's different than what you pictured. But there is sometimes, even after that, there's back and forth. I'm like, hey, can we adjust this? I fought really hard to get this beautiful metallic stamped cover. I was like, I really want it to be shiny. So there's different things, and it's a conversation. There are some publishers, I won't name them, but some big publishers that are like, here's your cover.
Yeah.
Hope you like it. If you don't, too bad.
I've been with one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is your title. This is your cover. You guys can look at the shelf over there. All my covers, it's like faceless woman peering off into the distance, contemplating life.
the genre,
that's like
yeah.
the genre. That's the trend. I can't stand it. And so you just have to try to push back, but it does depend. Now, to answer both your questions too, if you self-publish, and those of you who are writing, you self-publish, you're the
control
boss.
everything. Yeah.
You get to say what you want the story to be or not be, and you could have editors that you hire, and then you could say no. But truly, when you sign with a publisher, the editor is the boss.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Anybody? Yes.
Who, as an author, has influenced you the most?
You, good.
Daphne du Maurier. Have you guys read Rebecca? That was the first book. I know, for me, I know a book is good when it makes me not want to be a writer, because never in a million years. Like, that book is so, so beautiful. There's not a sentence in that book that is not a work of art. And despite the fact that it was written so long ago, she just boldly defied genre and said, this is a love story, it's coming of age, it's a murder mystery, and it is the most literary, beautiful writing you could ever possibly imagine. That book is one of the books I just want to live in like an old piece of furniture. Every year, like November, December rolls around, it gets like stormy and a little cold outside, I want to read Rebecca. June comes around, Anne of Green Gables all day long. So I'm partial to the classics. I love Anne of Green Gables, Little Women, Rebecca. I love a lot of the classics. Yeah, so I'd say Daphne du Maurier. I've read, I think, everything she's ever written, and it's funny because a lot of her stuff is very macabre. Like she wrote, we think of The Birds as like an Alfred Hitchcock movie. It's a novel that she wrote, which is terrifying.
Oh.
Yeah, so a lot of her stuff is like incredibly dark, really, really dark.
Love that.
Yes, and she was just way, way, way ahead of her time as far as feminism and how she represented girlhood and womanhood. Yeah.
And that opening line, right? Like, I think there's
Last
like...
night I went to Manderley again.
Yeah, I mean, to have what is probably the top 5 most famous opening lines of any
she's
book
incredible.
is
Yeah.
Rebecca.
Yeah.
Very good question.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
What else we got? Come on, you've got her for tonight. Yes.
I have a weird question. You were thinking about covers and titles and things like that. I think it's weird at the end of a book when they talk about the font. Do you have any experience with that? Why do they do that? And who cares?
That's so funny.
They love it.
Like the actual like fine print in the book where they...
Yeah. Have you not noticed that?
No, I never even noticed.
I don't know if you have in yours. I have it in 2 of mine. Were you at a book club event with me recently? Oh my gosh. There's a lady, I just went to a book club event. She asked the exact same question. It's an editor's choice. I don't think you
I
have
don't
it.
know if I do. I haven't noticed if I do.
Editors love font. I love font. Don't you love font?
No,
Oh my God.
I'm normal.
I love fonts. Y'all, there was this kids movie and they named the little girl character Helvetica. And she was like this little witch girl on a bicycle, and I was like, oh my God. And when she rode her bike, there was this music, Helvetica, and I was like, this is perfect. And I love font. I'm a font nerd. So I think some editors are really proud, because I remember talking to my editor at Penguin Random House about the font for Nanny Needed One Night. And I remember being like, oh yeah. I mean, because it
No, they did not consult me
Okay.
at all. So.
and they tried to make the font match the story. So if it's like more romantic or like it might look, the letters are open, like the C's are a little bit wider.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that interesting?
I don't think I kind of assumed all books were.
And they'll
That's
use,
embarrassing.
They'll use
Wow.
font that,
Really? If you don't like the font?
Some fonts are just too difficult to read.
Oh, that's crazy.
or if like
Wow.
entire sections are italics because it's a
Yeah.
throwback. I'm like, you don't have to put all that in like I don't need 6
There
pages.
was
of
a debut
blank.
that came out this year that they didn't use quotation marks for the dialogue, and I was like, I couldn't
Oh,
read that.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a new cool thing.
Oh, I couldn't. Yeah.
It's very clever. Celeste Ng, she did that in her recent book, but
Really?
she's not the only one.
That was, it starts with an A.
Starts with an A, 2 words, sounds like. Yeah, so for font, and have you noticed it's like the most, it's a font from 300 years ago. It's like, when Guggenheim Press, and you
Chris,
know,
the Other Valley, have you heard of that one too?
There is actually
It was Adelaide.
an old documentary on Helvetica fonts.
Really? I know there's an SNL skit about the guy, his like last name is Wingding, and he inherited the Wingding Empire. Like, I've seen that one. Yeah.
so everybody's now, because we're guessing all of you are here because you're readers, start noticing all your books are in different
I'm never
font.
gonna unsee that.
And
It's gonna
notice
bother
how
me.
some fonts are beautiful.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so I know
Right.
she watches a lot of suspense, reads suspense. Your favorite book's a little suspenseful, but for your free time, I would think if I was writing something all the time, I would want to go read something totally different for pleasure. What, do you tend to read all in the same genre?
No, not at all. I don't do a lot of like really, really dark, mostly because I read at night and I'm an insomniac anyway. So I really, but the last thing I read, I'm trying to think of books I've read recently, but I may be the last person on earth to read it, but I just finished A Gentleman in Moscow. So like it's again, another one of those books where every single sentence is just so deliberate and so beautiful. So I lean towards, I like reading literary books where the writing is so immersive that I just gush like over the sentences. I think they're, yeah, I like reading books purely for the prose. Yeah.
And every author's different because I know some author friends who cannot read when they're writing. So
It does influence your writing. I find that whatever you're reading does influence
it
your writing.
really will,
Yeah.
and or they'll read nonfiction if they're currently writing fiction. Yeah, I'm like you though. I need a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
So a lot of historical fiction and literary fiction, just to change it out. Who else? Yes, ma'am.
At what point did you go, okay, this idea is a whole book? This idea could really has some legs under it and can go somewhere? And then at what point in the manuscript process did you go, okay, I'm ready to like show this to agents?
You're an aspiring, you're a writer.
Must be.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is like such a writer question. I love
Yeah.
it.
So for me, with all the manuscripts, because I did end up getting representation. I had an agent for one of the previous manuscripts, ironically, the sci-fi, which is, I'm so glad now that it wasn't published. But so I never showed anything to an agent until the book was completely done. Same with you, or
Yeah.
did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
But
fiction. Yeah, you want to have it.
right.
finished.
So with Middletide, I knew I wanted to write something set in the Northwest because I was just, despite the fact that I love it here and I want to stay, I was desperately homesick. You know, I was in the middle of raising, a baby and a toddler, and I just really wanted to escape back into those woods. But at that time, my parents took this random road trip down the coast of California, and there's a section of the state called the Lost Coast that basically it's slowly eroding into the ocean. So every time the tide comes in, part of the town is like cut off because there's water over the roads, and eventually there will be no town there at all. But as they were telling me about this place, I thought, what if a crime happened out there at high tide? So like the suspects were limited to the people who clearly know each other really well in this small town. And as they finished telling me about it, I was like, there might be a novel in that. So that's where like the seed of the idea came from. And then of course it blossomed into something completely different. But once I had the full synopsis in place, but really honestly,
You need to write that, by the way.
yeah, that might be, yeah.
Yeah,
Now that
that's a good one.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah.
But honestly, the once I had the manuscript, you still, even when you're 80,000 words in, you're knocking at the door of the finish line, we writers are just so vastly insecure that you oscillate from being like, this is brilliant, to be like, I should delete the entire Word document right now. Like you're always second guessing your work. Even when it's finished and you send it out to agents, you have this sick feeling in the pit of your stomach of like, they're gonna like laugh at how ridiculous this book is. So I don't think that feeling ever goes away. I've heard that like even Stephen King once reached out to Harlan Coben. He's like, dude, can you read this? Because I'm pretty sure it sucks. If Stephen King feels like that, we are all gonna feel like that forever.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is like, to even if you're like, I'm not sure this is a real thing, or I'm not sure it's finished, like just keep writing. Just put the words down on the page, because you can't edit a blank page, and you can always edit it once it's done.
Come to our workshops, okay? Because we'll dive deep into all that. I could do a complete, like, afterwards, we'll chat. Okay.
Sorry, what was that?
Okay, like start to finish, for lack of a better word than that.
Time frame?
Oh, time frame?
Time that you start to today, launch day. What time frame are we talking? I'm just curious.
I wrote the book in 3 months, and then
Which is amazing, by the way.
that is quick. Yeah.
That is unusual.
But really, if you break it down, if you write 1,000 words a day, which is honestly not that much, that's a 90-day. That's a novel. So I wrote it in 3 months. I submitted it to my agent. I sold it a month later, and then it's been a year and a half until today. Literally, yes. Yes, the production of a book takes forever, and most of it is because there's just a really, really long lead time. They need to get it into Book of the Month Club, those people's hands, a year in advance, because they're picking their June for next year. It's like those things just take forever. So if you want a book to, like I said, take off at 600 miles an hour and make it, it takes a really, really long time to get the word out there. Because really, honestly, like what sells books is people seeing it everywhere, seeing it online, hearing about it in different print, and then finally like, okay, I'm seeing this everywhere. Why haven't I bought it yet? And then they buy it. So it's all of that. It's not about actually getting the book together, because that doesn't take very long. But
Because you'll have the paperback launch a year from now, right?
in March, yeah.
In
so
March.
10
Okay.
months.
Okay. So it will be like, for a lot of people, if they missed it the first round, which we hope they don't, but if they missed it the first round, it's like, oh my gosh.
It's a long.
You'll
yeah.
have another big, which is huge.
Now the hard thing is how you get paid is also split up to cover that time frame. So when you get a great big advance, it's not as much money as it seems, because that has to cover 2 years. Yes.
You got 3 payments over 2 years.
I think I got
Or
4, because there'll be
payments.
another one in the paperback.
Yeah, it's painful.
It's painful, yeah.
You get paid. I get paid 3 times a year.
Yeah. Yeah. And then if you're
Which-
lucky enough to make royalties, which like 90% of books never do. So, yeah.
Or you get foreign translations.
Yeah.
And
I've
you
had Bulgaria, Russia, and Germany.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sure you'll have more.
I hope
'cause
so,
Now
yeah.
that it's out, You'll get.
They offered, they're like, hey, we're going to send you some Bulgarian copies. I was like, why? I
Yeah.
can't read Bulgarian.
Get all of them. I have all of mine.
Really?
They're on a wall. I have Estonian, like I can read Estonian. I have Polish, Czech Republic, Russian, German. I have them all on a wall. And in fact, I Facebooked one day. I was like, does anybody read Czech? 3 people in Huntsville that responded.
You're kidding
So
me.
I personally delivered these books.
Oh, that's cute.
The publishers
That's
will
great.
send a huge box. So maybe
All right, you talked me into it. Okay.
you need to have a shelf of like,
Foreign copies.
yes,
Yeah.
because you know why else? Every cover is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something else that, because it's a totally different publisher, it's a different artist, it's, yes. And sometimes the covers overseas are nicer. It really just depends.
There's an article in one of the New York Times in the last 5 or 6 days. And so many of the European bookstores now are selling more English books than they are the translations. And they're saying it's putting a lot of the translators are going to be having problems. It's talking about your royalties are going to go down. But all the kids are wanting it because of Book Talk, they want the English cover.
Oh, that's funny.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they're experimenting with like putting the English title
Wow.
and the original English cover, yet the book still be.
Huh.
It's mostly in Germany and the Netherlands and Scandinavia.
Because Middletide,
It's not a real word, so I don't know how it's going to translate.
I was just thinking of
Yeah.
that. I was like,
That's their problem.
that is totally. I could see the Russian one where it's going to like be half of the book. You know how
Yeah,
they'll,
yeah, yeah.
they'll need an entire phrase to describe.
For like Stephen King's It was like, blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
And I always joke because we don't come with our covers. You got a great title and a great cover.
Thank you.
I'm not trying to blast my publishers, but some of my titles I can't stand. And when I line them all up, it looks like I'm single-handedly like taking out the entire family.
Yeah.
Like I'm killing the stepdaughter and then the niece is next and then I killed the husband. You know.
Are
And,
you okay? Okay.
Apparently family. And so it's been easier for them to translate. And I am learning Polish because
Yeah.
I'm like, that's how you say I love you to my children because of the acknowledgement.
Oh, that's
So I
great.
can actually,
Yeah.
right.
Wow.
But Russia was interesting because they were like, are you sure you still want to go with Russia with everything that's going on right now? And I said, thank you for asking.
Yeah.
But not everybody supports the war and they still need to read books.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm not going to like withhold.
Yeah.
Do we time for more questions?
No.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, you mentioned the criticism that you've gotten about any of the Native American. How do you think, I was lucky enough to get an ARC and I thought it was, I mean, from my perspective, which is tiny, I thought it was handled incredibly respectfully.
Thank you.
And how will that affect your writing in the future?
Wow. Lainey, is it? Yes, I recognize you from Facebook. That's a really, really good question. I don't have as thick of a skin as I thought. You know, it's really, really difficult when you write something that is so close to your heart and you do your due diligence to be as respectful and celebratory as you can, and you still have people that absolutely tear it apart. I hate to say this because I'm supposed to be marketing like my career, but I don't know that I'll write a book that's that close to my heart. Especially, it's not just with that, it's with like Elijah. As a main character, he is at times, and I mentioned he's autobiographical, he is profoundly unlikable. I think that characters are shaped by whatever setting you drop them into, and in his situation, it strips him down to the worst version of himself at times. He's a coward, he betrays the people he loves, and ultimately there's redemption, but I've had similarly readers tear him apart, and it hurts. So my main thing now is I haven't read reviews in a couple of months, because it's just, at the end of the day, it's one of those things, and as a mother, it's so difficult, but to stop doing this and just be like, ultimately it's one of those things that I just can't control. I can't.
Yeah.
But I can control what I let into my head.
It's that Khalil Gibran poem. That's how I look at it. It's like about children. If anybody's read that, it's like you're standing there with the bow, and your child is that arrow, and you let that arrow go, and it's like fly, baby, fly. Like I hope you have a good life. I've taught you everything. And same with the book. We put blood, sweat, and tears. It's gonna fly. It's gonna do. People are always gonna. I told you some of the messages I've gotten. People will always find a way, and I'm like, well, then you write a 90,000 word.
Well, and that's the thing too. You look up even the books that I would think are like universally beloved, like Where the Crawdads Sing. It was one of my, I was like, that book is flawless. If you go to the one-star reviews, and there are tens of thousands, people shredding it. And so it's like, I don't think Delia Owens is spending her time on Goodreads reading through her one-star reviews.
No.
And at some point, I think every author gets to the point where you're like, you just have to You just
Yeah.
have to step away.
You just say
Yeah.
noted or just ignore.
Yeah.
Don't even read it. Especially Goodreads.
Especially Goodreads.
Goodreads.
It is just a cesspool.
But if y'all all read, right, you're all gonna read Sarah's book, and we're all gonna write reviews.
Thanks.
Great reviews.
If you hated it, just don't say anything, please.
yes, ma'am. And then this might be the last
Yeah.
question.
How do you market the book? Now that it's out, what does your publisher guidelines, how do you get it out there?
That's a great question. I don't really do anything. So they have their whole team is, I'm assigned a publicist and a marketer, and then they have their team of people who, it's their job to put it into, like I just had a profile done in the Seattle Times, and Amazon, because they put it into their hands, they just chose as an editor's pick for June. And so things like that, that's all, again, sort of the thing that's just out of my control. And that ultimately is the reason, because I've been asked a couple times, like, okay, in choosing between traditional publishing and self-publishing, why not self-publish? You have more control. It's because I couldn't market to save my life.
Yeah.
I hate the idea of hard selling things to people. It just, it makes me cringe. So that's just really not something that I can do. I don't have the personality for it. I don't. So yeah, it's one of the reasons that I chose traditional publishing is that there's people who do it for me. Yeah.
It's worth that cut that we
Yeah,
give them.
it is, yeah.
It's worth
Every bit of it,
that
yeah.
cut. But again, if you self-publish, it's all in your control, so you can do whatever you want. You can price change. You can have, there are times I've thought, oh, I'd love to do like a sale promo, and you can't. It's out of your hand for at least, 7 years?
It would, however long your contract
That's true.
specifies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Well, thank you.
Have another book coming out.
So I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this, but so right now I'm on submission, which means my editor at Simon & Schuster, like they have my next material and they have 30 days to decide if they want it or don't. So I am halfway into that, so I will know very soon if there will be another book. I'm hopeful. I hope that there will be. I would love for there to be. I would really, really, really love to keep writing. So.
This book is doing so well, and it's had such a
I would
response.
hope so, but yeah.
They would be stupid
Yeah.
not to pick up your second book.
You still get to that
I
point that you're like,
know.
just give me $1 and I'll take it all.
Yeah. They'll wait till like day 30.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
It's summertime too.
I know.
Editors in the summer are like, I'll be back in September.
See ya.
Yeah, they don't work in the summer. So I bet you
I hope
they
so.
already want it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, all of you. And do you guys want to?